Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. We're back in the Middle East. The year is 1964, and even though it's not one of those years in which famous Arab-Israeli conflicts took place, it still doesn't mean that it was very peaceful. Both sides would frequently send reconnaissance flights over each other's territories. This would sometimes result in skirmishes or even serious clashes. The latest thing was the dispute between Israel and Syria over use of water resources from the Sea of Galilee. At this point, both sides had recently acquired high-performance Mach 2 fighters. In the Israeli case, it was the Mirage 3, and in the Arab case, it was the MiG-21. They were two rather similar fighters, designed about at the same time and primarily for the same purpose for which Middle Eastern nations had very little use for, and that was interception of high-altitude nuclear bombers. In that role, fighters were also supposed to be supported by ground control intercept system, and the acquisition of fighters in those cases was not necessarily accompanied by the acquisition of the matching GCI system. This was especially true in the Arab case because they had a lot of territory to cover, so very often their MiG-21 pilots could not rely on the GCI guidance as it was originally scheduled. And in fact, in both cases, both Israel and Arabs soon realized that their brand new fighters had many shortcomings. Those shortcomings mainly came from the weapon systems. For example, the principal weapon for the Mirage was supposed to be semi-active radar homing R530 missile, of which Mirage could carry only one on the centerline hardpoint. This missile was guided by the Cyrano radar in the Mirage's nose, and both of these systems turn out to be almost useless against fighter-sized targets at low or medium altitudes. Radar was also supposed to provide ranging information for the gun sight, but in that too it was pretty much useless. In fact, Israelis would eventually just take out the Cyrano radars from their Mirages and replace them with ballast. The next weapon available to Mirage pilots was domestically developed short-range infrared homing Shafrir 1, but it too proved to be very unreliable and achieved almost nothing in real combat. And finally, there were the two 30mm guns. As for the MiG-21, the early versions acquired by the Arabs, the F-13s, didn't have a radar at all. They were armed with one gun that carried only a small amount of ammunition for it, and two R-13 infrared homing missiles, only slightly better than the Israeli Shafrirs. The next version acquired by the Arabs carried a radar but had no gun, so in both of these cases it's obvious that MiG-21 suffered from very limited firepower. Let's now focus on the event of November 14, 1964. On that date, Israel launched a reconnaissance mission over Syria. It was flown by a French-built Vautour. It was escorted by the Mirages. Syrians scrambled their MiG-21s, attempted to intercept it, but they didn't catch it on time. However, a pair of Mirages still remained in the Syrian airspace to guard its retreat, and this flight was led by future Israeli ace Amos Amir. At a certain point, Amir was informed by the GCI that two Syrian MiGs were approaching at altitude slightly above theirs. This was a chance for a head-on intercept. However, Amir could not achieve radar lock, and two flights were fast approaching each other. And at the point when MiGs were practically above the Mirages, they executed a 180-degree turn, probably avoiding Israeli airspace. It seems that the MiGs were not aware of Israeli fighter presence. which makes sense because they had no radars. Mirages were just below their noses, and Syrian GCI apparently failed to inform them of this for some reason. This maneuver, however, enabled the Israeli Mirages to attempt a rear hemisphere attack using their Shafir missiles. And yes, this is not a historically accurate version of MiG-21. This is a later MiG-21 BIS. However, in DCS world there is just this one version, and it's very unlikely that somebody will develop earlier versions. So yeah, this is an approximation. So after the MiGs made their turn, Mirages started to chase them, and after a while they approached within the range of their Shafir missiles. Amos Samir launched one of his Shafirs, and despite the fact that its target was an afterburner, the missile simply died for the ground. Now at that point, Amir obviously lost faith in his missiles and decided to approach for a gunshot. At that moment, MiGs apparently were still not aware of the Mirage presence. Amir managed to hit the MiG with several of his rounds, but they apparently had almost no effect on the MiG-21, which dove and escaped. And at that moment, the Israeli flight received orders to return to Israeli airspace, so they also executed a 180-degree turn and started flying west. The MiG leader, however, decided to chase them and attempt an attack with his R-13s. The R-13 missed its target, just like the Shafrir before it. And what happened to those cannon rounds hitting the MiG-21? Well, it seems that the problem was in the fuses. Rounds had delay fuses which were optimized to cause damage on large targets, on bombers. However, when they hit small targets such as a MiG-21 fighter, they would go right through it and only explode once they cleared it on the other side. And so this first engagement between MiG-21s and Mirages ended with no kills being scored at all. The problem lying in their weapon systems, which all failed quite miserably. The radar-guided R-530 missile could not be launched because there was no radar lock. The infrared homing missiles both missed their targets, despite the fact that they were launched under good conditions, and even the old battle-tested cannon failed. The problem with the cannon was eventually solved by using impact fuses instead of delayed fuses, and Mirage would eventually score almost all of its kills using guns. And we're back. I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to press the like button, that's very important for the channel. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you're able to, you can support the channel on Patreon, which would be very helpful if you want to see more content. Feel free to comment, like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and keep watching Showtime 112.